Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority. Committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And good evening, Cayman, and welcome to another episode of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. We're your hosts, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and yes, welcome to Straight Talk. How are you today, Mr. Harris?
I am fantastic, Mr. Solomon, and I just noticed that somebody got themselves a haircut.
Hey,
looking sharp.
I can't let you walk around as the only person on the planet with a beautiful hair day.
Well, take off the headphones and show our viewers who are on streaming video the nice haircut. Yeah, profile look. Oh, yeah, very sharp. Very, very sharp.
Just a little posing for everyone.
That's right. Keeping it high and tight. Yeah, I had a great day today, buddy. It was a productive day, and for a Tuesday, I guess I can't complain.
Productive day is good.
Still exceedingly hot outside, and
oh, Lord.
I did see a few clouds suggesting we might get some rain, but so far, no drip drops to talk about.
Well, you know what they say about some of these clouds. They're nothing but promises.
Yeah, quite
Great
right.
cloud promise, but no rain.
Indeed. Well, while we're on the topic of weather, let me just see what the National Weather Forecast has forecast for tonight. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, becoming cloudy at times. 30% chance of showers. Temperatures will fall to the low 80s. Winds will be out of the east-southeast at 15 to 20 knots. The outlook, nothing to really write home about, is for similar winds and seas lasting through until Thursday. A small craft advisory is in effect. Now, I didn't have a chance to check out what's happening on the west side of the island, but I did happen to be driving along the South Sound Road today, and I did notice in that otherwise protected harbor, because you know there's a reef not too far out there, but I did see some whitecaps blowing, small waves, mind you, but you could still see, you know, the tips of the waves being blown by the wind. It was a nice little breeze coming off the ocean, so maybe that's the weather, a.k.a. high waves, that may be leading to the small craft advisory. Again, didn't check out what's going on the west side, but maybe the waves are getting a little bigger on that side.
By west side, you mean north?
Well, you know,
Up West Bay area. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I meant sort of, you know, anywhere from the port all the way up until 7 Mile Beach.
Well, you know, funny, I went walking earlier this morning.
The leeward side of the island.
On the leeward side.
Yes.
And put that on the leeward side, boy.
That's right. You got it, boo-boo.
Not from the windward.
Look, yeah.
So the thing is now is that I went walking this morning, and I just, like, what is that roaring? And I could hear the ocean in South Sound, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't see it, but I could hear it.
I also saw yesterday, speaking of South Sound, I like driving whenever I have the opportunity to head in the, you know, that direction. I like taking the road on South Sound just so I can drive near the ocean.
Right.
You know, I like to put my windows down and enjoy the breeze. I like to see the water. I find it to be very calming. Any other time except, you know, like 5 o'clock-ish hour this time, no, forget about it, because the line on that road is even longer than the one that's at Linford Pearson.
Well, if you want to get breeze, that's what you got to get on the windward side, because you got to go east end. Let me tell you, that's a constant breeze.
Oh, no, east end is a beautiful wind. But I was going to say that I noticed on South Sound yesterday, or in South Sound yesterday, rather, get my grammar correct, that the sargassum seaweed is starting to make its presence felt. I don't think it's quite yet piled up on the beach, because we haven't started to have that fantastic brisk odor that comes from dried seaweed, but I do see it starting to build in certain pockets.
Now, I wonder if you're going to get a text from the gentleman that told me to call it football and not soccer, because
because...
When exactly did we transition from seaweed to sargasm?
Well, I think we
Sargasm just sounds to me like something that went wrong, if you know what I mean.
Well, we call it sargasm because certainly when we talk about the big patches and plumes of seaweed, particularly that happen seasonally or sometimes in cycles, of course, we track the major, quote-unquote, sargasm movement, and that's what the media reports it. So whether it be the American media...
I just grew up all of my life, and I'm pretty sure it happened in the last couple of years. I don't remember ever hearing that word.
Well, I guess seaweed is, as they say, the colloquial term, and sargasm is the scientific definition, if you want to put too fine a point on it, Mr. Sullivan.
Just checking, because it sounded a little bit like the football soccer thing to me. That's all I'm saying.
That's all you're saying.
That's all I'm saying.
Well,
I'm just wondering.
Cayman mariners and Cayman fisher folk, if you got a problem with the seaweed versus the sargasm, well, by all means, share your thoughts, 745-2626, or you can WhatsApp them to us at 928-2562. It is Tuesday, and it is another opportunity that we can sort of remind our listeners that coming up tomorrow, as we talked about yesterday, and we're going to, again, remind you one more time today, coming up tomorrow at 5 o'clock, we look forward to hosting the Miss World Cayman Islands. Jada Ramon will be our guest in studios at 5 o'clock. Originally, she was planned to appear on the program last Friday, but was feeling a bit under the weather, she was. But she seems to be back on her feet and conducting her normal duties, according to some of the organizers that I spoke with. But she will be our guest on Wednesday at 5 o'clock here in studios to talk to us about her recent trip to India and, of course, the historic performance that Cayman and Miss Ramon were able to accomplish at that pageant. If you want to know more about the historical context of this conversation or just hear from Miss Jada Ramon and see her, let me might add, because we are broadcasting not only on your radio dial at 103.1 FM, but simulcasting live over YouTube and Facebook with the key search word Straight Talk Radio Show. You can find us at our Facebook page or, of course, our YouTube page. You can also find us featuring streaming video, as always, on the ACT Cruise Tourism page. Want to send a big shout-out to ACT for continuing its collaboration with this program. So that discussion will kick off tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and we want to encourage as many people to be a part of it as possible. So we got some good news. Actually, we got a lot of good news today. And
the lineup.
There is a lineup. And I thought to myself, well, we got a lot. We got kind of a surplus of good news. Should I share it all today or split it up and save it for other days when we're slow? But then I said, when we're slow, it's an opportunity to tell a joke or two. So we'll just share the good news as we have it available. And it's Tuesday, so why not?
You know how we love your jokes, Austin.
You're very kind, Ellio. You are very,
the
very
moment
kind.
you mention that you're going to tell a joke, I hear chuckling.
Fantastic.
It just starts. It starts in the room. It just ripples out. So you just feel free anytime you feel like it, just coming here and tell us your jokes.
Flattery, my dear friend, will get you everywhere. I appreciate your support.
100%.
I appreciate you, my brother from another mother. So we'll start on something that's sort of up your alley. We see on Monday that the turtle release was also done in celebration of World Sea Turtle Day. Now, I don't know whether this is just by the luck of the draw and World Sea Turtle Day happened to fall on a Monday this year as opposed to a weekend in previous years. But I always thought that the Sea Turtle release program usually happened on the weekends. Never during the week, but I thought the weekends was when it was normally held so that school children, young people, as well as, adults could participate and, be involved not only in the scene, but certainly an appreciation for the obvious environmental aspect of this exercise that has been ongoing in the Cayman Islands for many, many a moon. But apparently, a crowd of spectators gathered at Governor's Beach on Monday to witness and celebrate 2 green sea turtles being released into the sea in celebration of World Sea Turtle Day. Okay, so this wasn't, the usual baby sea turtles and hatchlings being released that we do a couple times a year, but in this case, these were 2, I guess, if not mature or adult green sea turtles. These turtles are part of the center's initiative known as Head Start. Well, the article calls it Head Started, and it just doesn't seem to roll off the tongue well, so I'm assuming that might have been a typo. I'm calling it Head Start, Sea Turtle Release. If CTC has a problem or it is, in fact, Head Started, then by all means, feel free to correct me. But basically, it is designed to give the green sea turtle an advantage as they go into the wild for the first time. Shauna McGill, Assistant Curator of Educational Programs at the center, said that these turtles stay at the center for a couple of years as they wait for their shell to fully harden. And in that way, it greatly reduces their predation risk out of the wild and increases their odds of survival. So we've all maybe seen some of those discovery footages that go out there with, and you can see it now, the tiger shark attacking the turtle, and trying to get it, but having great difficulty with it because its shell,
it does offer a little bit of a challenge.
It does offer a bit of a challenge, though we won't even begin to talk about the bite force of a tiger shark, because usually the tiger shark wins in that particular battle. But there have been some moments.
Got to get it just right, though.
It does, yeah. But the center says it aims to release at least 500 turtles a year, and so far, the Cayman Turtle Center has released over 36,000 green sea turtles into the wild as part of their program. And I think that is a phenomenal number. It certainly speaks very highly to our conservation efforts here in the Cayman Islands. And certainly when you look at our coat of arms, it features a turtle. So that means if you're a snorkeler or a diver, the chance of seeing a green sea turtle in the wild is very high. And if you do see them, then it is very likely that the one you're looking at, got its start at the Cayman Turtle Center, and it remains in Cayman waters. Or it could very well be the offspring of one of those turtles who were released and still find their way.
Yeah, that would probably be the key. Yeah, chances are if you're seeing a green turtle, it probably has something to do with the Turtle Center.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Of course, we do know that, I'm assuming, I don't know what the travel patterns of green sea turtles, particularly once they're released in the wild from Grand Cayman, may be. But I suspect, again, if you go from the documentaries, and I'm a big fan of Nat Geo and other documentary nature channels, they have a wide territory, much like sharks who have been known to travel thousands and thousands of miles.
Yeah, apparently they're all up in all other type of islands all over the place.
That's right.
With a Cayman tag on it. Bit like the ships.
Indeed. So 2 green sea turtles were released on Monday. 500 a year get released, and so far 36,000 have been released by the Cayman Turtle Center. All of that, I think, is phenomenally good news. A big shout out to the Cayman Turtle Center, and a big shout out to everybody who came out and attended, and certainly, appreciated this conservation effort. And of course, the educational programs being offered by the Cayman Turtle Center. Summer, I know, is approaching, and you're looking for things and activities to do for our young people, our young children. Certainly want to recommend a tour of the Cayman Turtle Center. It has gotten a lot bigger, a lot better. There's more than just turtles at the Turtle Center, so there's a lot to see. And let me not forget the water park, but next door to it, which is a part of the Cayman Turtle Center. Always a fun day of activities.
Don't forget the heavy helmet there. You can go under the water now and walk around. And
okay.
Like you're under that. What was that movie? 1,000 Leagues Under the Ocean.
Yeah, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah, hey.
And then, of course, I remember something a bit more recent, Men of Honor with Cuba Goodings Jr. and Robert De Niro, which features...
You sound like a real movie man, Austin.
Well, I do like some movies.
I dabble.
Like you, I like to be entertained. And I go to the movies to just sort of rest my brain sometimes and just sort of let myself be entertained.
I haven't been to the cinema for a while. I got to go again.
Yeah, no, I have a movie buddy who will remain nameless just for their protection. But if they are listening, I'm just saying we're kind of overdue to see a movie or two. I'm just saying. So if you're hearing me, you might want to WhatsApp me and let's make a plan.
Let me know what's showing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a couple of good movies in the new quote-unquote John Wick movie called Ballerina, which is not necessarily in the John Wick series. I think we're like John Wick Chapter 4 now. But ballerina is an offshoot of it, so I know that's out there. Last week there was
I'm totally lost. You see, I haven't
there was
even watched
Mission
that.
Impossible: The Final Reckoning, but again, from what I've heard, it's not the final reckoning or the final Mission Impossible. So there's a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of that film. But I haven't seen either of them, so I couldn't spoil it for you if I wanted to. Sticking with water sports, first the green sea turtle, and we also see in today's headlines that Her Excellency the Governor, Jane Owen, competed in her first Flowers Sea Swim over the weekend. Governor Jane Owen, age 62, competed in the 33rd annual Flowers Sea Swim on June 14th, the first time she has attempted the mile-long open water swim, telling the Compass at the finish line that her strategy of taking it slow and steady had paid off. And speaking of Nemo, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. I can hear that going on, maybe in Her Excellency's mind.
Was playing that.
Took her time. And this is not a race. I am not trying to win any medals. I just
need to make
it. I just want to get to the end.
Start to the finish.
That's right. So good for you, Governor Owen. Well done.
I'm doing this for the UK.
That's right. Well, the UK, and I give the governor credit. She certainly has embraced all things Caymanian since being here. All things Cayman Islands, mind you.
Pushing it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's not take it too far. All things Cayman Islands. Let's be precise. But she seems to be enjoying it. She posts everything on social media. So
I thought you were about to tell me she ate a plate of turtle. But anyway, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe she's gotten adventurous and decided to try that delicacy. It is good though. I would highly recommend it.
That would be news.
That would be news. Yeah, post that, buddy.
Yes, yeah. How does this work out for the U.S. conservationists? I don't know. She's eating turtle.
Well, we also have to say congratulations to the Flowers Sea Swim. 33 years, obviously.
Yeah.
It's been in existence. A very popular island and annual event. This year, the event attracted some 633 swimmers. Who finished the race on Saturday afternoon, competing the distance in 53 minutes and 43 seconds. Presenting the plaque commemorating the swim was the Minister of Education, the Honorable Ralston Anglin, who presented to the governor and also made a sort of sometime-ish, not 100%, promise that maybe he might participate in the swim next year. And certainly,
must be a political promise.
Might be a political promise, that's right.
You know what those are.
I wouldn't depend too much on it. I wouldn't hold your breath, so to speak. However, if Minister Anglin does in fact compete, let us be the first to encourage and or invite the Honorable Minister of Sports to also participate.
But I was going to say, I mean, not that I have a problem with good Mr. Anglin handing out stuff and giving commentary, but where was the Minister of Sports? Was he filling in for the Minister of Sports?
The article did not stipulate such details, but he wasn't present. But certainly we would recommend the Minister of Minister of Sports, sorry, Freudian slip there. Minister of
Say that again?
Minister of Sports.
Well, you kind of got port in sports. So
It did.
You just slipped on the S. I mean, it's only perfectly understandable.
It was. What are you thinking about, Mr. Harris? What I'm always thinking about.
The point. Lord, help us.
Yeah, well done to the governor. Well done to Minister Anglin for making a promise. Again, political promise. So we'll take that for what it's worth.
So what is it? Annual, right?
Annual event. So
next
the
year
one is 2026, maybe June-ish. So
next year we might hear something like, the Minister of Finance wanted to be here and sent his apologies, but
he pulled a hamstring.
He's he's overseas on business.
There you go. Tell you what, he's going to schedule that for him. Listen, I want to be anywhere except near 7 Mile Beach in the month of June. Okay? Make a mental note.
Get me the date. Make sure. Listen, I'm depending on my minister staff to take care of this.
That's right. More heads will roll, by Jove.
All right.
Well, if that does happen on the Minister of Finance / Education, it still doesn't get the Minister of Sports off the hook. So, Mr. Rankin, I think that's who it is. Yeah, Isaac Rankin, Minister of Sports. Hopefully you'll be in that runnings as well. Politicians don't like to show off their legs. It's a general rule. I was told, when you got elected, it's like, You can't wear shorts. You can't wear open-toe shoes. Just don't do it.
I thought it was just a stomach thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't want to show the stomach.
I was told by the father of the house these are things that one should not do or be seen in public as doing. And certainly the stomach would be certainly something you would not want to share either, because for some strange reason it tends to grow when you're in elected office. And no, it's not because you're eating all the time, but actually to the contrary, some of us, most of us.
Sedentary lifestyle.
Well, it's what it is. It's a sedentary lifestyle. You're working, insane hours. You don't have time to, get to the gym. Maybe that's an excuse, but it is true. What free time you do have, you use it for something more important, like sleeping.
Yeah.
So that you can maintain your health levels. And you can do it all over again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
then what would the public say if they looked and is that the minister doing mountain climbers there? No one's going to say, hey, we admire that guy trying to stay healthy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if he was climbing mountains, he'd have to go to the Brack and do it on the Bluff, because that's the most mountain he'll find in Cayman. You don't have to do rappelling off of Mount Trashmore.
The bottom line is you don't have a personal life,
You don't.
You want to beat the guy up for putting on a little weight, but hey, if he's at the gym, look at that, huh?
Look at that, wasting time.
You're paying him and he up in the gym.
Look at that slacker. Yeah.
There you go.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Can't win.
Cannot win. I'm going to include this in the good news category because it means an uplift for the taxpayer purse. But, whenever we talk about surpluses for the taxpayer, the government quickly turns around and finds excuses on how to spend it. But the Planning Authority apparently processed $12 million worth of planning applications as of its end of May minutes. The Central Planning Authority processed more than 20 development applications worth a combined total of over $12 million at its May 28th meeting. The outcomes ranged from outright approval to environmental referrals and adjournments, according to the minutes, which were published just this week, the 12th of June. What do we have on the list? We have a West Bay duplex development by Invicta Construction Limited, receiving approval for a $2.8 million project to build 2 duplexes with cabanas and pools on Shorecrest Circle in West Bay. We've got 2 luxury residential projects approved, a $2 million house and pool in Bodden Town, and a $1 million house and plunge pool on an unnamed private road in North Side. So, we're building a mansion, but we can't tell you where it is because we don't want any visitors. Furthermore, there was approval for 6 townhouses on Shamrock Road, more so in the Lower Valley area, worth about $929,000+. This was given approval despite the project not meeting the standard lot size requirements, but obviously some amendments and adjustments were made there that the CPA found that, we're just going to rubber stamp it anyway. Show me the money first, though. Island Taste Bakery expanded their bakery operations. Davenport Development Limited secured approval to convert a warehouse space into a commercial kitchen and bakery on Belmont Close in Georgetown. The $15,000 change of use application will allow Island Taste to relocate its bakery operations from the Caymanian Village. However, Ken Thompson, representing the applicant, assured the authority that there would be no retail operations at the new location, just baking. So they're going to bake at the new location and I guess distribute it to its retail outlets.
Big up Island Taste and Ken Thompson.
A big shout out to Island Taste. Listen, they're more than just patties. They do a fantastic lunch menu every single day, but their patties are delicious. Don't get me wrong. I love their patties. They also have added donuts to the mix. So
I like them raw cakes, boy.
Got a little bit of sweet in mixed with a little, quote-unquote, spicy. But, yeah, if you haven't checked out Island Taste, specifically at the Caymanian Village, then do it this week. If you haven't sampled and enjoyed a good old Caymanian Island Taste patty since maybe high school, do it. Close your eyes. It'll transport you back.
It'll take you back.
It'll take you to the canteen days when you used to go to school. Mm-hmm. It was. It does take me back every time I enjoy it. It's one of those life's simple pleasures. And last but not least, Downtown Reach Project Acreage Investments gained approval for 5 subdivision lots and 34 land strata lots for downtown Reach project on Linford Pearson Highway, facilitating the creation of separate strata plans for the high-density residential development. So for those folks who, hate the development, hate seeing every square inch of property being developed, boo-hoo, sorry for you. But for everybody else, the taxpayers are the ones who benefit from the uplift of these developments, obviously in the form of duty and planning and application fees. In this case, we're looking at application fees.
Might even be a place to live.
It might even be a place to
Who
live
knows?
because let's not forget there is a housing shortage. So great big thanks to those developers who are behind these projects, also offering employment opportunities for several contractors who are obviously doing the building. None of them, Ellio Solomon and co. But that's okay. We're waiting for, the next big grand Ritz hotel. That's going to be your project, Ellio.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, we were just talking about your construction company you love to build.
Oh, I see you're dragging me into things.
I'm dragging you into things. Going back to your desire that you would love to build a hotel.
Well, the last thing we need is to make people think, Ellio's almost involved in that project. Now it's being approved. Oh, God, that's the last thing. No, I just admire construction. And all I'm simply saying is when I looked at Hyatt, I said, look at that monster.
Look at that monster.
Like, wouldn't you like to be involved in building something like that?
Sure you would. It is 59 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock. We're going to pause, take a quick check with our BBC News, but keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk still to come here on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News, the world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. President Trump has demanded Iran's unconditional surrender. Amid mounting speculation, the United States is considering joining Israel's campaign against Iran. Sources have told the BBC's US partner, CBS, that Mr. Trump's National Security Council discussed the possibility of US planes mounting strikes against Iranian nuclear sites. That meeting has concluded, but there's no word yet on its outcome. Here's our North America correspondent, Nomia Iqbal.
There are really 3 options for President Trump. Number 1, to get involved and drop this huge bomb that Israel would need to totally destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities. The other option is to not get involved, stick to his whole belief, one that he's campaigned on for years, of no wars, no interference in the Middle East. Or the third option, try and strike a middle ground, try and have negotiations, and I suspect that's probably what he wants to do, and that perhaps all these social media posts that he's putting out there, which are very threatening, are sort of scare tactics to try and get Iran around the table.
President Emmanuel Macron of France has warned that any attempt to change the regime in Iran would result in chaos. President Erdogan of Turkey accused the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of being the biggest threat to regional security. Meanwhile, there's been no let-up in the hostilities between Iran and Israel, as Sumi Samaskanda reports.
Israel and Iran attacked each other for a fifth day with massive waves of airstrikes. Thousands of residents are fleeing Tehran for fear of further Israeli raids on the Iranian capital. Israel has been targeting nuclear facilities, military sites, and other infrastructure across Iran. Israel's military says it has killed 4 of Iran's most senior military commanders. Meanwhile, Iran's army chief urged Israeli residents in the cities of Haifa and Tel Aviv to evacuate before it launches missiles targeting Israel's military bases.
Canada says Donald Trump has blocked moves by G7 leaders to issue a strong statement on Ukraine. A Canadian official told reporters that all of the G7 countries at the summit had agreed in firm language criticising Russia for the Ukraine war. The official said a watered-down message would have been unfair on Ukraine. Members of Parliament in London have voted to decriminalise the actions of women in England and Wales who terminate their pregnancies after the 24-week legal limit. Medical professionals and others could still be prosecuted. The MP, Tonia Antoniazzi, said she was motivated by seeing police investigate women over suspected illegal abortions.
This is a monumental day. It really is good for the women moving forward. It doesn't change the Abortion Act. It just decriminalises women, taking them out and looking after them.
BBC News. The mayor of Los Angeles has lifted the curfew which was imposed in parts of the city last Tuesday, following protests against President Trump's immigration policies. Karen Bass said there had been a marked reduction in acts of violence, vandalism and looting, but warned she wouldn't hesitate to reimpose the curfew if needed. She blamed the violence on bad actors, but again accused the Trump administration of escalating the situation. Federal officers in New York have briefly detained a Democratic Party mayoral candidate for allegedly assaulting immigration enforcement agents at a courthouse. Video showed Brad Lander being handcuffed. He was released hours later following the intervention of the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. She said charges against him had been dropped. Argentina's former president, Cristina Kirchner, has won an appeal to serve her 6-year prison sentence for corruption at home in Buenos Aires. The judge said the decision was due to her age. Scientists in Switzerland say permafrost in the country's Alps is now at the warmest level since records began. It follows research conducted by the Swiss Academy of Sciences amid growing fears over the effects of global warming on the famous mountain range. Tom Bailey reports.
Permafrost, the frozen subsurface soil found beneath around 5% of Switzerland's total surface, is often described as the glue that holds mountains together. When it thaws, it can lead to rockfalls and landslides, meaning there's understandable concern over these rising temperatures. Just last month, the possible devastating impact was on full display, with experts believing melting permafrost was probably a factor in the destruction of the village of Blatten, when a huge chunk of glacier crashed down a mountain valley.
BBC News.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, and the phone lines are once again open on this Open Mic Tuesday. The number to call, 745-2626. If you want to call in and share your voice, whether you want to ask a question or make a comment, take us in a direction, suggest the topic, whatever you want. The phone lines are yours and available for your use. Alternatively, you can also reach out on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562, and there you can share either a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. In addition to broadcasting on your radio band at 103.1 FM, which hopefully you got saved as in your favorites, you can also find us simulcasting live over YouTube and Facebook at the Straight Talk Radio Show keyword page on Facebook and YouTube, but also on the ACT Cruise Tourism page. We did get a WhatsApp message during the break with a very interesting question, Mr. Solomon. I really don't know the answer to this, but we're gonna see if you do. Good day, Ellio in Austin. Can you clarify whether all government boards or boards with government representation in the Cayman Islands, if they are required to publish their meeting minutes? An example might be the Liquor Licensing Board, the Port Authority Board, or even the Cayman Turtle Board. If so, is there a legal time frame or deadline within which those minutes must be made public? And where might one find this without filing an FOI, that is a Freedom of Information request? Well, honestly, I think it's a very good question. I don't know for a fact how to answer it. I don't think there's a legal requirement that they must be published, but I do believe, certainly since the introduction of, freedom of information and information officers being attached to every ministry, that many boards, if not all boards, are encouraged to release their minutes and meetings. But I don't think there's a legal requirement that it be in the public domain. Ellio, maybe you know a bit more details on this question than I do.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with you. I know, first of all, the Public Authorities Law Act would require that definitely all the minutes are recorded. And in many cases, I think it is encouraged. I can look it up specifically, which I will over a couple of minutes. But I know it would be encouraged to publish them. But to your point, definitely you have the Freedom of Information law, which allows you to make requests in terms of specific areas. Let me just see here.
Well, while you're searching for that online, certainly we thank the listener for asking the question. And again, as a good example, we don't always have the answers, but what we don't know, we certainly know how to get. And if we can, we will certainly solicit or find that answer for you before the show is over, as my colleague diligently searches his phone right now. But if we don't get the answer today, we will certainly pursue an answer and get back to you. But again, we believe it is not a requirement, but I understand that they are encouraged to do so. But it is a choice for each individual board, their chairman, and or their members to make that decision.
Yeah, so they don't always have to publish them. Some boards do, but you don't have to necessarily publish them, is what I'm understanding. But clearly you're obligated to keep those minutes. And in the event that there is an FOI, then you would obviously release the relevant information. If something has to be redacted, then it is. And again, even then, those things can be challenged as well via the FOI office and using FOI law.
Actually, they did mention, again, some useful boards that the public might want to know about. The Liquor Licensing Board, the Port Authority Board, the Cayman Turtle Center Board. I think these are three fantastic examples, where persons would be, informed. I think the Work Permit Board would be useful numbers, but that, I suppose, falls under personal data protection. They can't share those details. They could probably tell you how many work permits are granted, but they couldn't tell you to whom and where.
And then there's a matter of annual reports as well that gets tabled a lot of times or laid before the Parliament. Again, persons can get access to. But but there's a difference obviously in terms of getting information and versus getting the minutes. It's a horse of a different color.
Quite right. Quite right.
Yeah, you just gave some information, for example, in release of turtles, and that's information. But to say I want the minutes is a horse of a different color.
I might be fishing for I don't know the information I want, but something may jump off the page, and therefore I find that interesting. And then I learn something.
And so some bodies, I got to slow that down, right? Some bodies might go ahead and publish it immediately.
Right.
I would like to see and know which particular ones do that. But definitely you're entitled to get information via FOI request. And again, with the phishing on the FPH, I think it's a case where you would be given specific requests, and then it should be granted. I don't think you'll really have much of a problem.
Yeah, indeed. Well, thank you very much for the question, and as always, feel free to share them with us. Again, either via our WhatsApp number, 928-2562, or we do have email. We don't mention that enough, but it seems that a lot of folks who want to communicate with us prefer either the phone or WhatsApp.
And again, just so everyone knows, everything there is kept confidential as well.
Absolutely.
Sometimes Austin doesn't even share it with me, which is not right. I'm about to lodge a complaint on that.
Well, all the comments coming in that we read live on air, obviously, just contain the comments. They don't contain the authors of them, unless otherwise stipulated by the authors. Certainly, we found out yesterday, we received one such WhatsApp message, which, of course, we followed our protocol. And then he called up shortly afterwards, say, hey, it was me that said that. Well, there you go. It was, as was his right. We certainly do not make a practice of revealing the authors of messages sent to our program, only the questions and or statements they make. Again, we offer that up just as perhaps a little assurance that, none of your personal details will be revealed unless you want it to be.
We could make that a technical discussion, Austin, in the sense that your silence obviously would have agreed with the caller when he made that assertion. Because technically, if we put on our police hat, just because he claims to have committed the murder doesn't in fact mean he did.
Good point.
Right?
Very good point.
Just saying.
Just saying.
In case you want to put a finer point
If you want to put too fine a point on it. Very good, Mrs. Solomon. Very good. Well, speaking of the police, and to prove once again, Mr. Solomon, that we do in fact share the same brain. We were talking a few weeks ago, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. Time all tends to blur in one direction and blur. But we do remember hearing and talking about comments emanating, I think it was from Finance Committee, or maybe even been from a news. I think it was actually to the contrary to a news media report where the RCIPS, that is the Royal Cayman Police Service, stating that they were short on resources. Yes, that's what it was. When we were talking about the annual statistics that were released by the police, and they said, well, there was these are the stats, but they could be plus or minus because, frankly, if we had more resources, then maybe the numbers might have increased.
In fact, just the other day, you and I were talking about the police and the need for greater transparency.
Yep.
And I said, wasn't it just the other day we were hearing something? They needed more police officers and more cars or something.
Well, they needed more police officers. And in the media today, of course, following a public tender published by the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service that can be found on the government website, cig.ky, specifically their bonfire procurement portal, the RCIPS has issued a tender for 24 new patrol vehicles as part of a major fleet upgrade with bids expected to close on the 31st of July. According to the public tender, it is looking for 8 police pursuit interceptor mid-size SUVs with gray exteriors. Don't get it black. We don't want it. We want gray exteriors. 2 white police pursuit interceptors equipped with canine cages, and 14 basic police pursuit interceptor frontline SUVs in white. No dollar figure was quoted, obviously, in the request for proposal. They're just stating this is what we need, and undoubtedly, like most of these RFPs that are issued, obviously the lowest bidder, I might add.
The cheapest possible.
The cheapest as well as possible will likely be selected, as is the usual protocol. But there are a few prerequisites. Suppliers must demonstrate compliance with all technical specifications through either manufacturer documentation, as well as providing at least 1 full year coverage warranty on parts and labor. So really that takes us to the point where really only authorized dealers or distributors can arguably provide these vehicles because, whilst we do have amateur or non-professional vehicle importers into this country, few import with warranties to support the vehicles. So It lends itself to believe that they're looking for dealers. But that said, I also, and again, you're going to correct me if I'm wrong here, but the average person can't purchase or acquire a police interceptor vehicle. These cars are made specifically for law enforcement, and they generally don't go in private sector hands.
I would imagine.
You can't just walk into an auto dealer in Florida and say, you know what? I want to be as fast, if not faster, than the cop chasing me. I want one of their cars. They'll look at you like, no, you can't have it. Now, be gone. So I suspect that dealers will be the ones that will be answering this RFP, but certainly, it's open to anyone. The procurement follows a competitive dialogue process with an initial submission deadline for July 7th, followed by a dialogue period from the 15th to 23rd of July before final bids close on the 31st of July. Interested suppliers must hold a valid Cayman Islands trade and business license and provide 3 references from companies that have procured similar goods within the past 5 years. So it's not a very generalized RFP at all. It's a very specific RFP looking for specific companies to provide authorized police interceptor vehicles, which should shorten the list of persons that might otherwise participate in this RFP. But if you are listening to the sound of our voice and you are interested, or perhaps you are one such person or entity who might be able to fit this bid, you are encouraged to submit your submissions through the government bonfire procurement portal, with bidders being advised to begin preparations at least one day before the deadline. Again, the deadline for initial submissions is July 7th, allowing for a period of discussions, perhaps a little back and forth and or negotiations, with final bidding closing on the 31st of July. Again, this information can be found on the Cayman Islands government website, cig.ky, on the bonfire procurement portal. So
interesting. I mean, I want to clarify. I mean, I don't think the average individual walks into the store and buys a police interceptor, but
I don't think so.
I would imagine that anyone with a sort of reasonably registered company that's, it's in good standing, probably irrespective of what they probably perform, could, if they can show clearly that they're attempting to procure these things on behalf, in this case of the Royal Cayman Islands Police, could go forward with those transactions, and the companies that do sell them would do so through that particular company as the intermediary, right?
Yeah. Well, I do know
that is possible.
The police, and just by looking around at persons who own "quote unquote" former police patrol cars, they do, when these vehicles reach the end of life, which really is very quickly, because they are put through the paces in the police service. When you think of the average life cycle of a vehicle, one is operated for 12 hours on a shift, and then a new shift comes over and they pick it up for another 12 hours. So in some cases, these vehicles are operating on a 24-hour basis. They are machines, so they do break down. As I understand it, it is encouraged, even for vehicles in the fleets of vehicles that are highly used, there needs to be a cooling down period, because that engine block gets hot. And when metal is hot, it expands and should be given a time to cool down before it is used again. Otherwise, it increases the wear and tear. But I digress. When the police do auction off some of their vehicles, either to recoup costs or just to get rid of old inventory, I do know that police interceptors have been sold, but they are not sold with the interceptor engines. These engines are removed, and a more stock engine is replaced prior to the sale for obvious reasons. So I don't suspect, again, the average person can buy a police interceptor vehicle, and I likewise don't expect the average person can sell a police interceptor vehicle. So these are specialized services in my mind, but I stand to be corrected if there are some vehicle professionals within the sound of our voice that may seek to clarify these statements. By all means, we're all ears.
Yeah.
21 minutes, now 22 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. We got about 7 minutes remaining before we have to go to another break. And I figure since we're talking dollars and cents, Ellio, now might also be a good time to move on to an article that appeared. Well, actually, it appeared, I think, in almost all of the media houses, but I will pull directly from the Independent. I want to make sure I get the name right because I really like this publication. The Cayman Independent. You can find it at caymanindependent.com. Another shameless plug. These guys really need to advertise with us. Just saying. But I do like it. I like how it's laid out. We see in one of the headlines, election candidates submit nearly $2 million in expense returns. For those of you who are interested what the politicians spend at the last general elections, but perhaps were afraid to ask, well, here they are. The Elections Office has published a summary of election candidate expense returns detailing nearly $2 million in expenditures and more than $923,000 in third-party contributions. Of the 58 candidates that contested seats in 19 electoral districts across the Cayman Islands on April 30th, all but 5 submitted expense returns. Those that did not submit expense returns were independent candidates Jermaine Ebanks Hurlston, Romelio Welcome, Hunter Walton, Philip Ebanks, and Leon Gold. Supervisor of Elections Wesley Howell noted that current legislation contains no penalties for non-submission of returns by candidates who are not successful in attaining the vote to sit as official members of Parliament. So those 5 need not worry. They will not be getting a knock at their door saying, shame on you for not making the submission, though it is encouraged, but there is no penalty for those persons who didn't. The returns submitted by candidates and political parties detailed expenditure totaling CI $1,939,957.41. This breaks down in the following ways. Expenditures per candidate during the reporting period averaged about $23,898 per candidate, with individual spending ranging from the low $390 to a high of $58,000 plus dollars. The lowest spender in the last election race was independent candidate for Cayman Brac East, Ruth Ann Bodden, whilst the highest overall spending is attributed to the 12 members of the People's Progressive Party at $699,751. Now, interesting in that figure, Juliana O'Connor Connolly, of course, who was the former premier, and interestingly enough, said she was going to retire, but then at the 11th hour broke poor Dan Scott's heart by declaring that she is going to run for office, and did and won. She ran on the PPM ticket, but she funded her own campaign in Cayman Brac, spending just over $14,000, according to Elections Office data. Yeah, I know.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? She appears to have funded that spending herself or raised the money prior to the official campaign period, since she reported that she raised zero funds during the 8 weeks between nomination day and elections day. And I think this is a good educational opportunity, Ellio, because certainly the law only requires declarations from the time a candidate is officially nominated up until the election day. But it is not unusual, and certainly candidates are aware of this, some might say, loophole in the elections law, and they do begin fundraising efforts way in advance. So it is possible that candidates may have a bit more than $14,000 in their war chest, but the law only stipulates that from nomination day, when you officially become a candidate, until election day, do you need to declare. Yeah, and I also suppose I understand that, because a lot can change between, the day you decide you're going to run for office and nomination day. You go, you know what, I'm just not going to do this. So it has been known to happen.
Yeah, well, I chuckled because I said, poor Juliana saying, this won't be much. I can beat this guy. I kind of just pictured someone going, Let me see what let's find something in my drawer here.
I almost spit that coffee through my mouth and out my nose.
That's what I kind of pictured, right?
That was timing, my friend.
It's like you have no idea what you're messing with.
You have no idea.
So anyway, I looked in, remember that little thing we used to have on our bureau? You open it up, the little doll. Little ballerina came out.
Yep.
I got a couple grand in here, and let's go out and see what we can do. So that's what came to my mind. But yeah, to your point, the spending up until you're nominated, I mean, that is not tallied in. And the public might want to keep track of that. I mean, we know that you had even members of now the present government would have been having campaign signs. What do those things cost? I mean, it's a pretty penny, right?
Pretty penny. Well,
I'm thinking a couple hundred a day or something.
Well, a couple hundred a day. I knew one entity that had, again, very entrepreneurial and creative. He went out and, bought the wood and constructed the signs and stuck them in the ground and then just waited because he knows the politicians are going to want to do this themselves.
Rent a sign.
So he did rent a sign, exactly. And he was making something like $1,500 a sign.
Hey,
so
you got to get creative.
It's good business if you can get it. And, again, without revealing the details of who this particular entrepreneur was. He was Caymanian. He is Caymanian. And I was, again, kudos for being creative, my brother.
He might have also been more creative by parking cars in that spot so no one could take it until he got to it.
Maybe.
But I
it
think
is the entrepreneurial spirit.
I think those electronic signs are, I'm trying to stretch my mind.
Well, those aren't cheap either.
But that's what I'm talking about, because I'm thinking a couple of $100 for the day.
Yeah, man.
Some of those are up for like a month and a half.
Yeah, it's not cheap to run for office.
So you just tally it up. It's a lot of money, and the thing is that again, it's really something for the public to really consider, because
we have to pause. We're going to take a short break, but this conversation will continue next, right here on Bobo FM.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
We need to talk. Okay. We've noticed you've been going to KFC a lot more than usual lately. And
that's fine. We know you love it.
We just don't understand how you could afford it.
The KFC What a Deal menu starting at just $3. Gives you lots of great choices and value. Available at KFC Baytown Plaza, Shedden Road, and in the Strand. The KFC What a Deal value meals. The deal everyone should know about. Come to KFC and enjoy a variety of tasty choices at surprising prices. KFC, so good.
At Priced Right, spending less on everyday products is easy.
Spend less on office supplies, tools, and automotive products.
Spend less on groceries, fresh produce, and meat.
Spend less on electronics, TVs, and speakers.
Spend less on home furnishings, beauty products, and apparel.
At Priced Right, we believe you can live better for less.
To start saving, visit us at the Airport Center in Georgetown or at Republic's Plaza in West Bay.
For more info, visit pricedright.ky. Live better for less at Priced Right.
Shirts, pants, or linens. When you want them clean, just drop them off at Island Cleaners. Island Cleaners is a full-service dry cleaner, meaning you name it, they clean it. Professional shirt service, fluff and fold laundry, and more. Even drape and area rug cleaning and alterations, from quick hem jobs to resizing dresses. Island Cleaners, your one stop for everything clean. Artco Drive off Shedden Road. Ask about VIP and prepaid discounts.
Insurance matters. It gives you the confidence to live life as you should, knowing you're protected. As a leading local insurer for over 25 years, Island Heritage has a consistent track record of providing best-in-class customer service with quick and efficient claims processing. This means insurance you can rely on when you need it most. The Island Heritage Way. Visit us online at islandheritageinsurance.com today to learn more about our home, contents, motor, marine, and commercial insurance products. Go on and live your life. With Island Heritage, you can.
The Office Hero. To claim this title, you have to make an exceedingly wise decision. Do something that benefits staff, impresses clients, all while keeping expenses low. Are you ready to be the Office Hero? Here's what to do. Call Hughes Cleaning Service. Hughes Cleaning Service will make your office shine and you a hero. Dusting, vacuuming, windows, sanitizing, and more. Hughes expert cleaners will make your office a healthy, immaculate, impressive workspace. Call 949-0734. Visit hughes-janitorial.com. Hughes, you get more than clean. Hello, pet parents. We're K-Man Vets, K-Man's most advanced veterinary clinic providing quality care and services. We are committed to being your pet's advocate and friend, offering a lifetime of care. From vaccinations and wellness checks to more advanced surgical procedures, complicated medical concerns, and emergency care on demand. For more information about us or to get in touch, please visit kmanvets.com. K-Man Vets, where compassion meets excellence.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcasting live on YouTube and Facebook. We are your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, and the phone lines remain open at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. And from there, you can share either a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. Likewise, if you wish to email us, you can also email us at host@straighttalk.ky is our email address. Prior to the break, we were looking at the article contained, again, it's contained in all the media houses, but we are reading specifically from the Cayman Independent, whereby the elections office has published, as a matter of law, the election campaign expense reports, which show that of the 58 candidates who contested some 19 seats at the April 30th general election just passed, some $2 million were spent in the local economy, I might add, in order for those candidates to successfully compete. Prior to the break, we were talking about the highest spenders down to the lowest spenders. Again, the highest overall spending can be attributed to the PPM, who ran 12 members and spent just over, well, almost $700,000 on their campaign, $699,751.02 to be specific. Next in line were the 12 members of the Cayman Islands National Party, who spent $455,422.07. Now, interestingly here, the Cayman Islands National Party raised just over $35,000 in revenue from presumably third-party revenue, third-party donations, but they went on to spend over $455,000 on 12 candidates. So, you know, that tells me either it came from one in particular donor, or perhaps they raised the rest of the money from the individual 12 candidates themselves. But again, wouldn't that count as, you know, raised revenue? I'm just thinking out loud.
Well, no, not if you're kind of doing it for yourself.
Yeah, I guess not. Well, that's how it was recorded by the elections office. And again,
so what was the other one? CCP.
Yeah, the third one was the TCCP.
Oh, yeah.
Which we've gotten used to just calling the CCP, but now not any longer. They spent $394,749.05.
And so these are the numbers coming in after nomination day.
After nomination, right through until elections day. This is the submissions that every candidate who's successful at the polls is required to submit to the elections office, and the elections office fulfilling their legal mandate to publish it. The CCP, on the other hand, unlike the CINP, who raised just over $35,000, the TCCP managed to raise over $211,000 from third-party revenue or donations, and spent just over $394,000 on its campaign for 10 candidates. This deficit is understood to be due to the party still owing money to small businesses for their support. So, I think that's another point. These candidate expense reports are supposed to end with a zero balance. There should be no surplus or deficit. Every dollar you raise has to be spent during that period, as outlined in the requirements of the elections law. But in this case, there is a deficit, and that is simply made because the CCP haven't paid all their bills yet, but they're under an obligation to do so, and I'm certain the suppliers who provided them service.
So do we know the total amount of numbers of persons that ran in the respective parties? Let's calculate the per head. So you said progressives were $699,750.02.
Yep.
And how many candidates we had running?
12.
So that's a 58,000. I thought it was 13, by the way.
Just 12, according to this.
That's 58,312. What's the cap now?
Well,
it used to be like
40,000.
35 or something.
40,000 is the new cap. I'm going to get to that. Be patient, Grasshopper. You give away the big surprise at the end much too quickly.
Hold on. You've been talking for quite a while here, Mr. Harris. There's got to be a time limit on how long you keep something. What the? Come on. 609. Okay, and then what is
just
CINP?
CINP, they spent $455,422.07 over 12 members.
Like who's counting?
Yeah.
12 members?
Elections office.
12 members.
12 members.
So that one's 37,951. So that's within the number.
Yep. And then last but not least, the TCCP spent $394,749 spot 05.
Hold on. 749. What?
394 749 spot 05. Over 10 members.
39. So again, that's within the number.
That's
but I want to say that I think we keep talking about election reform, and we talk about that probably every year, every term. But there's a lot of things that you have to consider. I mean, number one, you'll get these numbers, but it's not like these numbers are audited. It's like, who's double checking that? This is on the veracity of your statements. Okay? So I think it's very important for the public to understand that.
Yeah.
You're only going based on what TCCP or CINP or the progressives have told you. There's no one there to double check all of that.
Yep.
Okay? So where that becomes interesting is, well, why would, considering that, I don't know what's happening if you get the progressive that's submitting a number that clearly puts themselves above the limit per candidate.
Well, see, that's the thing, because to your point,
being honest,
exactly, and that tells me that these expense returns are honest. Because if they were quote unquote fabricated, to your concern, why then would the PPM in this instance acknowledge that they spent over and above the legal cap, which is, again, according to the Elections Act 2022 revision, the maximum amount of election expenses to be incurred in respect of a candidate at an election shall be $40,000. So you can spend up to $40,000, but no more. In the PPM's case, they were in breach of this section, having spent an average of $58,312,000 per candidate. And again, the elections office and the election supervisor stipulated in the article that these submissions in excess of the law are presently being reviewed by the relevant authorities. So they may very well be charges or otherwise brought against the PPM. The law states, again, the same Elections Act 2022 revision states, and I quote, "Any political party which acts in contravention of the law commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction of a fine of up to $25,000. So again, I state that whilst to your point, these election expenses are not audited, it would lend itself to believe that they are factual, because if they weren't, why would the PPM acknowledge breaking the cap if they could avoid it?
Well, picking up on that point, we could infer that they're being honest from the fact that they have recorded something that clearly puts them in violation of the law, which would be extremely honest. I mean, I must say that's some serious honesty. Yeah. They should get an award for honesty if that is indeed the case. Yeah. So we won't assume that because it's higher, whereas the other ones are within. So equally, we should be inclined that maybe they're just going ahead and matching the numbers that are supposed to be there. And again, what's important is that it is not audited.
You're so pessimistic.
No, just being realistic. I've been in a couple of campaigns. At the end of the day, there is no one there to monitor those numbers. There's no one that's fact checking all of that stuff.
True.
So again, we could assign honesty to one group and say the other ones are just I don't know, something neutral, whatever makes us happy. But I'm inclined to believe that the numbers submitted by the progressives have to be an error.
Okay.
I'd like to believe that I claim this an error. It's just, I mean, unless you're just trying to win some award for honesty, I question that. But let me just say also on these numbers, the fact that persons are allowed to spend, and let's be clear for the public, paint this with crayons, that I could want to run in an election in 2025, which took place in May, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, April 30th.
April 30th. I could go out, let's just say, starting January, and especially if I'm a millionaire, which I'm not. Austin is, but I'm not. So I could borrow money from Austin. I could spend...
Must be Jamaica.
I could spend $2 million up to a nomination day.
I got $2 million Jamaican dollars in my pocket right now. You want to see it?
Hey. Stop fighting it, Austin. You know you got dollars.
Yeah, dude.
So anyway, the bottom line is you can spend $2 million up until nomination day. It doesn't count. It doesn't get added into the equation.
Yeah.
Why is that important? The public needs to think about that. Is that the right thing to do? One of the challenges you can see why they probably do that is, well, until you're nominated, you're formally not a candidate. Then the question becomes, well, how do you know if the person's going to be running? Mm-hmm. How do you know that? What are the triggers that says clearly you're going to be running, and so we should start adding things up? Those are some of the difficulties that you have to say, well, how do I find a solution to that if you want to be able to make it that you do start counting? But you can spend $2 million, and then at the end of the day, you match that $40,000 number. I think the last time I ran it was something like 30 something. So I'll take your word on it. It's now 40. Mm-hmm. And you know, that $40,000 kind of becomes arguably irrelevant in the big grand scheme of things, because if you're doing all your homework, all your stuff has pretty much been bought and done, locked down, as we would call it, before nomination day.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what has happened there, but I would honestly like to believe, using the word honesty, the word of the day, I'd like to believe there has been error.
Well, again,
that's just amazingly honest.
Well, it is. And listen, I'm going to say, give people flowers whilst they're still around, lest they otherwise think you're just being overly harsh. I worked with the PPM for 4 years, loyally, I might add. And whilst I wasn't a flag or card-carrying member during those 4 years, I worked diligently with them. And the PPM are a lot of things, but dishonest is not one of them. So I believe that these figures represent the true and exact figures. However, there's an easy way to fix this. And to your point, these election expenses are not audited. And maybe I did it because I was green at the time, but I ran 2 election campaigns, one for and one to get reelected. And I had to submit the same election reports twice. But I kept all of my receipts, and I still have them. Just in case somebody one day down the road says, I want to question your integrity, Mr. Harris. And I learned that from Martin McLean. And that's a valuable lesson, because he, too, was once upon a time questioned for his integrity. And he shocked the world by saying, here are the receipts. And they were old, but hey, good for him. So I suspect if there was an audit, and certainly in this case, if there is going to be an investigation for election breaches, the PPM will be asked to provide receipts, and I wouldn't be surprised that they have them, because there's no shortage of accountants over there. But I have no reason to disbelieve that these numbers revealed in the expense reports are, in fact, 100% honest, because certainly if they were fabricated, who would openly admit that they were, in fact, in breach? If they could avoid it, I don't know anybody who would do that. But to your point of these election expenses not being audited, the the general public don't want to take my word for it, your word for it. They don't have to believe a single word that is written in all the media houses today on this subject. In keeping with Section 69.3 of the Elections Act, the 2025 candidate expense returns are available for inspection at the elections office located in Baytown Office Suites, 68 West Bay Road in Georgetown, between 9:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. on weekdays. So anyone who wants to review these election returns, I'm assuming anyone means registered voters, but they did say anyone, so it doesn't necessarily stipulate that it's, voters only. But if you have question marks or you want to see this with your own eyes, again, you have every right to do so, and you can do so between 9:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday at the elections.
Well,
office.
First of all, I thank you for vouching on the honest side. That puts that hopefully to some degree.
They're honest, maybe a little devious, but they're definitely honest.
Considering that you were once a part of the Hive, I will take your word on it. But
in my experience, I did not see any dishonesty that I would come back and say, don't trust the word these guys say. I state what I saw.
But see, where that becomes a challenge, though, is that, and really, I want to move this beyond any particular group. Because I don't want to make it sound like I'm focusing on one particular group. But let's just be clear. If you're going to breach the election law in terms of the amount of money that you are going to spend, and the punishment is $25,000, I'm not sure that works. I remember one time calling and saying, planning department, how much is it going to cost if I burn this pile of stuff I have here? I can't remember what the numbers was, but $300. And then you call them, and how much does it cost for you to take it away? $450. It sounds like you're saying burn it.
I'll save $100.
But let's be clear, money helps you win the election. And how can the punitive measure be simply a matter of $25,000? That's like me getting up and saying, I don't really give a crap. I'm going to spend $2 million because I'm winning this election. My punishment is $25,000.
Yeah.
If I can find 700, if I can find $2 million, I don't really think 25,000 is going to break the bank.
Drop in the bucket.
What matters is winning the election. So I'm not sure that we should be able to tolerate the election law continuing with that sort of punitive measure of 25,000. I'm not sure is adequate. And the same thing goes of saying if a candidate loses the election, they don't have to submit it either.
Right.
Because you have proxies, you have persons that can be employed simply to make somebody else win and to make somebody else lose.
Good point.
And
that happens every day.
To me, there's too much variance there for abuse.
Yep.
Okay? So let's just be clear. Somebody has deep pockets, and at the end of the day, they just make up their mind. I don't flagrant disregard for the law. I don't give a crap. What matters is winning this election.
Yep.
You're telling me I can record that I spent $2 million running in the election. I have won. I keep my seat, and the only thing I do is pay $25,000. Nonsense. That don't make no sense.
All right.
That need fix up.
That need fix up. Well, laws are amended all the time. And certainly, hopefully, we'll get a chance to get to an example of those amendments in our discussion today. But maybe there is room. I will say to you that, there have been talk over every election cycle, every 4 years or so, this topic of election expense reform has always propped up. But again, the people who are going to reform those laws are the people who obviously won the seats in office and thereby are the ones going to be held to an account.
Happy with the present system.
Exactly. They're happy with the status quo remaining unchanged. And unless, of course, there's a petition or a large outpouring of requests or protests or demands for this sort of reform, like we've seen in immigration reform, for example. It was on the lips of every candidate, clearly suggesting that every door they knocked on, the subject of immigration came up. Perhaps if they found themselves in a similar situation with saying, listen, the way you all pay yourselves and the rules in which, you're all held accountable, I believe we need, even broader transparency. And if that becomes the pervasive, dominant thought of the electorate, then likewise, I'd be surprised if it didn't happen.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, like I said, and I'll leave it with this again, coloring in bright colors, so make sure everybody gets it. It is a matter that there are persons who are running, and I have talked about this from the time we started the program on February the 10th, and that is you want to be able to give an opportunity for everyone to have a showing in an election so that you can make the best decision on who you want to run the country.
Mm-hmm.
And money is one of those things that creates an unfair advantage. And this is where I am a proponent of trying to make things a little bit more of a national level, to the point where you have the sort of debates like the Chamber of Commerce that can be moderated and everybody gets a fair chance and a fair showing, as opposed to saying, because I have millions of dollars, I can put the signs all over the road that you can't even possibly see another sign. I can book every meeting place for the entire 2 months that you can't even get a venue. Bear in mind that all of that can happen.
Right.
And in the law, it's just the same thing. And the law is about not considering what you're going to do, but what you have the potential to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're saying that you have the potential to spend millions within a 2-month period of time to guarantee your victory, and that the only punishment, the only punitive measure is $25,000, I'm sorry, but that becomes a laughing matter in my case, because I don't see how that really resolved the problem. Either way, kudos to the PPM if they are as you say they are. I mean, I can tell you that is a very honest group, and I don't say it lightly. I say it very seriously. They deserve commendations for that one. They win on honesty.
Well, we talk about election reform, and if we go back on, again, your earlier point, as relevant as it may be to perhaps the Flower Sea Swim, where Minister Anglin didn't promise. He did, again, protect himself. He did say, I might participate next year. But going back to that election campaign prior to April 30th, on the topic of election reform, it was, in fact, the now premier, at the time, the CCP leader, Andre Ebanks, at one of his many public meetings, that he promised that if elected, the party promised to introduce a new style of government that takes place in the open and not behind closed doors, suggesting that it would implement a robust parliamentary code of conduct, introduce fixed ministry portfolios to deepen expertise and minimize disruption, but also to increase transparency in the political campaign process. So we could potentially see that election campaign financing reform or parliamentary reform under this government, which of course is, the National Coalition for Caymanian is made up of CCP, CINP, and independents, with Andre Ebanks now elevated as premier of the Cayman Islands. So that group did promise that it would deliver election reform, would deliver greater transparency, would deliver greater responsibility in the form of a parliamentary code of conduct from its members. So if we want to, I guess, keep a running total, checking boxes in terms of whether or not they have in fact fulfilled their promises, I just state for the record that this was one of the promises that they made on the campaign trail, and they were in fact successful at the polls, and the voters gave them their trust and confidence to be amongst those 19 leaders that will govern us. So we can only hold the premier and or the members of his team, which make up a part of the National Coalition for Caymanian Government, to the veracity of their word, and see whether or not they follow through on those campaign promises.
Yeah, well, on the reform thing, and perhaps just to end it off, I think we need to look at things such as the amount of money that you spend prior to nomination day. It is a challenging issue, but it might simply come down to something as simplistic as a time frame. For example, if your election takes place over a 2-month period, then it might be simply something as 2 months prior to as well, in terms of calculating things. If at the end of the day you actually end up getting nominated, it would mean that those figures would come into it as well. You want to be able to create as much fairness as possible. And again, I would say that if you can spend $2 million and only pay $25,000 fine, even if you're successful, that's hardly anything that I would consider to be a deterrent from spending the money.
Indeed.
And also bear in mind that persons who are elected have a natural advantage, as we refer to them as the incumbents, because they're in essence getting a salary to do nothing else other than to go there on a daily basis and campaign. So in other words, whether they are opposition, whether they are backbenchers, or whether they're on the front bench, they're walking around and shaking hands and campaigning and doing whatever it is, and they're doing that on mine and your dime. They get paid a salary, whereas the person who is challenging is having to find that money on their own.
Indeed.
So definitely some of the things that we need to look at and consider, and hopefully we can discuss it more and hopefully get some change.
Absolutely. Just, again, to sort of, bookend my previous statements, particularly for those otherwise further pessimists or disbelievers out there who might say, well, Austin, how do we know Andre Eubanks really said those words, not you making it up? Well, again, if we look directly at their manifesto, which was published online, and probably you can still access it today, the manifesto states, and I quote, "Good governance and strong institutions are the foundation of a fair society where the rule of law is upheld with no one above the law. The TCCP is built on the principles of accountability and integrity, with a party constitution that enshrines our objectives, structure, leadership, ethics, operations to ensure that all candidates are aligned to the party values. We say enough is enough to bad governance, irresponsible spending, side deals, undue influence from special interest. In addition to introducing a parliamentary code of conduct, the party will strengthen the standards in public life and anti-corruption acts, just to name a few." Again, these were the words from the manifesto that were basically promises made by the TCCP during the election campaign. If members of the public want to hold them to account, that could suggest that election campaign financing reform is also potentially on the table. 59 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock is the time in studios. We have to pause. Time to check it again with the BBC News. But there'll be more Straight Talk coming up next on Bobo F.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News. World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat. Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. President Trump has demanded Iran's unconditional surrender. Amid mounting speculation, the United States is considering joining Israel's campaign against Iran. Mr. Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke on the phone on Tuesday following a meeting of the U.S. National Security Council. The president and his security team are reported to have discussed the possibility of conducting strikes against Iranian nuclear sites. Here's our North America editor, Sarah Smith.
He campaigned for election, saying that he would put America first and not get involved in any foreign wars. That was a very popular message, and some of his most vocal supporters in Congress are also urging him not to do this. But there's one thing Donald Trump has always been absolutely consistent about and absolutely unequivocal on, and that is him saying Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. And he is said to believe that they are now very close to achieving that, so he could be talked into taking some kind of action, possibly.
President Macron of France has warned that any attempt to change the regime in Iran would result in chaos. Speaking to reporters at the G7 summit in Canada, he expressed hope the US would restart diplomacy.
I believe that the biggest error today is to seek a regime change in Iran through military means, because that would lead to chaos. Therefore, our responsibility is to resume discussions as quickly as possible to restore a framework for addressing the nuclear and ballistic issues.
President Erdogan of Turkey accused the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of being the biggest threat to regional security. Canada says Donald Trump has blocked moves by G7 leaders to issue a strong statement on Ukraine. A Canadian official told reporters that all of the other G7 countries at the summit in the Rockies had agreed on firm language criticising Russia for the Ukraine war. Our diplomatic correspondent James Landell reports from the talks.
There was a little good news for Volodymyr Zelensky at the G7. Canada promised Ukraine $1.5 billion in further military support. Britain announced sanctions on more Russian oil tankers. But Ukraine's president did not get to meet Donald Trump, who'd left early, and Canadian officials said the US blocked a joint statement criticising Russia. They said the US wanted to soften the language so it could protect its ability to negotiate with Moscow. Differences also emerged over the G7's price cap on Russian oil.
Despite G7 leaders failing to issue a joint statement on Ukraine, there was agreement on a number of other issues. 6 joint policy documents were released, including new commitments on artificial intelligence, migrant smuggling and wildfires. World News from the BBC. Members of Parliament in London have voted to decriminalise the actions of women in England and Wales who terminate their pregnancies after the 24-week legal limit. Medical professionals and others could still be prosecuted for procuring an abortion outside the existing rules. The mayor of Los Angeles has lifted the curfew imposed on parts of the city last Tuesday, following protests against President Trump's immigration policies. Karen Bass said there had been a marked reduction in acts of violence, vandalism and looting, but warned she wouldn't hesitate to reimpose the curfew if needed. She blamed the violence on bad actors, but again accused the Trump administration of escalating the situation. Federal officers in New York have briefly detained a Democratic Party mayoral candidate for allegedly assaulting immigration enforcement agents at a courthouse. Video showed Brad Lander being handcuffed. He was released hours later following the intervention of the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. She said charges against him had been dropped. At a news conference, Kristen Gonzalez, a Democratic state senator in New York, condemned what had happened.
When we see people taken by ICE without due process, and we see our comptroller arrested right here in the building behind us, that is not normal. What is happening here is an affront to our democracy, and it threatens each one of us.
Scientists in Switzerland say permafrost in the country's Alps is now at the warmest levels since records began. The frozen subsurface soil is found under around 5% of Switzerland's total surface area, and its thawing can cause rockfalls and landslides. Experts believe this was probably a factor in the destruction of the village of Blatten last month. BBC News.
The views and Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. 7 minutes past the hour, 6 o'clock is the time in studios as we enter now in our final, give or take 30 minutes, our last segment before the day. Again, reminding you that Straight Talk airs Monday through Friday from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. every day. The phone lines remain open. 745-2626 is the number. Or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. From there, you can either share a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. And likewise, so too is the email address available to our listeners. You can email us your thoughts, comments, or questions at host@straighttalk.ky. And Ellio, just very quickly, because I know you want to address one or two points before we wrap up for today. You know, we're talking just before the break about, you know, what we might expect from the National Coalition for Caymanians. Will it be in line with campaign promises that promise a better good governance structure, greater responsibilities from a parliamentary code of conduct, amendments to the standards in public life and anti-corruption laws? All of these are question marks. We just simply don't know, what they will do. And we await their strategic policy statement, which will do many things, but predominantly outline what their key goals and objectives will be over their 4-year period. And we have been talking about, obviously, our anticipation of this SPS being released in the public domain, though the government members have indicated through various media reports, given some hints as to what their priorities will be. I think the largest of which has been the assurances the public has been given that immigration reform, which was among the top 3 key issues during the last election campaign, will form part of their priorities. From some of their utterances in the public domain, we've heard of the Jobs for Caymanians Only announced by the Premier and the Honorable Deputy Governor. Likewise, of course, immigration reforms as it relates to rules in the private sector that relate to or have origins from the immigration white paper that was proposed under the previous outgoing administration. That will be adopted and embraced as part of the immigration reforms going forward by the new administration. However, as for the completeness of their goals, plans, and ambitions, you and I, as well as the public, are going to have to wait a little bit longer. The government is proposing to extend the deadline for presenting its strategic policy statement to Parliament from 3 to 6 months following the general elections. Like all things that parliamentarians do, everything they do is governed and given authority to by some law or act, and the SPS is no different. The Public Management and Finance Amendment Bill, or the Public Management and Finance Law, provides these stipulations, but it will be amended in the form of the Amendment Bill 2025, which will seek to change the current requirement that an incoming government present its SPS within 3 months following a general election, which, according to the existing law as it stands right now, would mean the SPS would have to be presented in the public domain by way of tabling in Parliament on or before the 31st of July. But the government has indicated it will be making and seeking an amendment to this bill, thereby pushing that requirement to 6 months, or the 31st of October, in election years only. And that's a very important point. So in this case, when we're 3 to 6 months away from the last general election, if successful, the Public Management and Finance Amendment Bill will push that requirement for the new government or the new incoming government to present their plans, their goals, and priorities 6 months following the election date. Minister of Finance and Economic Development, the Honourable Ralston Anglin, also shared details of this intention in the media, basically stating that we found that 3 months is just not enough time. So the changes will be brought to Parliament in the form of an amendment to the Public Management and Finance Act at the next meeting of Parliament, which we understood is now scheduled to begin on the 25th of June. And whilst we thought previously that this may be an indication that the SPS would be presented, and therefore we could remove the guessing component and the assumption or speculation that we've been engaging in terms of what we think the government might set as its priorities, we're going to have to likely wait at least a little bit longer, potentially until the 31st of October, before we know those details, as the government is likely to bring this amendment bill to Parliament when it next meets at the end of June. And they have the numbers, so there's no reason to believe this amendment will not pass. So for those of you out there waiting to hear what the government goals are, like us, well, it looks like we're all going to have to wait just a little while longer.
I mean, I think it's reasonable.
I think so too.
From what I'm hearing, I mean, as far as I know, it's always been the discussion that is too short, and quite frankly, why hasn't it been amended already? And particularly if it's a new government coming in, you can understand that they need to really get a proper understanding of what's happening on the ground, and then on top of that understanding, then start to formulate some of your plans and make tweaks. Because there's one thing on what you promise during the campaign trail, it's another thing as to how you have to tweak things based on what you have discovered, such as we might not have as much money because there's no cruise, such as that. I want to say that I understand that MSC, and you heard this here first, MSC, the cruise line, has taken Cayman Islands off of its itinerary. And I understand that is most likely going to be 2026. At least that is my understanding. I did want to say on the discussion very quickly yesterday, I think for those persons who didn't have a chance, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it. My colleague and I had a good and lively discussion in relation to minimum wage.
Yep. Yeah, it was a very good discussion yesterday.
It was a wonderful discussion. We also had Deputy Leader of the Opposition called in as well. So it was a good discussion.
Yep.
And I want to encourage person to go and have a look. But I did want to, I think one of the things my colleague was saying to me yesterday is about, encouraging us to try to see if we can get some experts up in here to chat about this. So that is one of the things we're trying to do, is see if we can get someone that, is the quote-unquote economist.
Yes.
To perhaps come in here. And
sure.
No, we're not planning on flying Marla in.
We're not?
I just want to get that clear.
Come on, buddy. I was getting all excited. I was going to break out the streamers and everything.
No. So
darn it.
The thing of it is that I did find something on a couple of quotes, and I thought I'd give this one at least. Milton Friedman, the Nobel laureate economist. Here's a quote from him. Every economist knows that minimum wages either do nothing or cause inflation and unemployment. That's not a statement, it's a definition. And again, I just want to encourage us as a country, again, to look at all of these things and not necessarily jump in, as they say, take it hook, line, and sinker, just because another country is doing it. And I asked the question yesterday, I'll ask it again. If the minimum wage is really working, if it makes the world a better place, if the income tax does, if the land tax does, then why is the Philippines not better? Why is Jamaica not better? Honduras not better? America not better? England not better? It's not that simple. At the end of the day, I think if you look at minimum wage, it's going to create an inflationary situation where the prices just continue to go up. I gave the examples yesterday as the person on a simple jerk chicken stand, and that position remains. I think the solution is for us to really go out as a country, as a nation, a government, and that is to actually tackle the real issues that are causing us to have to be able to have these high prices, and starting with things like utilities and housing and so forth. So I don't want to undertake that. We'll try to see if we can get someone. I'm going to reach out perhaps to Mr. Livingston, who is there with the University College of the Cayman Islands. I mean, we've chatted with him again. We congratulate him in terms of his promotion. But maybe there's someone there from the university, if not from ICCI, or maybe both, that we can come in and have some of these discussions just so that we can hear it from, the quote-unquote experts. And hopefully we have our own local experts that we can actually bring on board.
Indeed, and just for completeness, whilst Ellio, of course, argued in that vein, I argued to the contrary, suggesting that minimum wage does not necessarily have a significant impact on the increase of cost of living. The cost of wages are only a small percentage of the factors that make up the cost of goods and services in any economy, even Cayman, where labor is a major component to pricing. But certainly when we look at the cost of living, things like the cost of utilities and the cost of gasoline have a much greater impact on the cost of utilities than increasing wages. I also argued that an increase in wage reduces turnover, which, of course, is a cost savings from the standpoint of employers. But also anybody will admit if you earn a little bit more, then your morale increases. And if your morale increases, then your productivity increases, which is also a benefit for employers and, of course, the overall economy in general. But to my colleague's point, neither one of us are experts on this point, and we certainly would welcome having a conversation and a discussion with an economist. And that's not to say that, the economist is going to be necessarily the, unrefuted expert, whatever he or she may say, because, again, it's all a matter of opinion, and one economist's view may be entirely different than the next. And you only mentioned Ms. Dukaran as an example.
It was just easy.
As we discovered in the Dukaran conversation, that while she felt there was no cost, benefit, or value for money in the cruise industry or cruise passengers to the Cayman Islands, we read, when we had those conversations, not taking us back there, just saying we read on the same month when those discussions were taking place, another economist presenting an alternative, but perhaps the entirely exact opposite viewpoint from Ms. Dukaran, that he felt that cruise tourism does represent value for money, particularly in the Caribbean region, which has seen an increase in cruise arrivals everywhere there's a port. And, of course, that means everywhere there was a port, not in the Cayman Islands, where we see, and we will continue to see, we said it, and you know what? We believe history will bear it out, that we're going to see a decline in that sector, and the pain that is coming down the pipeline is yet to be experienced, but it will come.
Well, there's at least one cruise line, like I've said, is just according to, and I heard it here first, taking Cayman Islands completely off the itinerary. And I think that is significant. We're going to continue to monitor the situation and see how all of these things go forward, what actually happens, and the impact. But, of course, it's going to have a negative impact. I can't see much positive coming out of it. But it is going to be one of those realities that this government will have to grapple with as well. So again, when we talk about the SPS that my colleague mentioned in terms of the delay, well, you can see why you might probably need a delay, because you've got to figure out what you're going to do when you're getting a bigger hole in the bucket.
Yep.
And you're losing a little bit more money than you initially anticipated.
Indeed.
But yeah, you can see that my colleague and I are on totally different sides when it comes to the minimum wage, which is good. It's healthy. And it was a great discussion yesterday. I want to encourage you to look at it. You can go on the Facebook page and or YouTube, find it, and get a little bit of that discussion. It almost became a little bit of a triad as we got it. The deputy leader called in, but we lost him in the process. I swear we didn't push him off.
We did not.
And,
but it was a fantastic example of the point that we always make, that, we don't always agree, but we can disagree without being disagreeable with one another.
Yeah.
So it is possible between two very good friends, and Ellio is my very good friend, that we do sometimes, whilst we do share a brain, that brain does sometimes disagree with even itself. And there are moments, there aren't many, I will tell you this, there aren't many issues that we disagree on. And, people used to say to us when we, in a different life, what you really need to do, and this should be your mission, that you have a real crosstalk every day on every issue.
Well, it's funny you say that.
And we just said, you know what? To present anything other than that which is organic or authentic will come across as canned or fake, we believe, to the listening audience, whereas it works much better if everything we do is as organic and original as possible. And that
not pretending.
is what, exactly, it's not pretending. We get together, there's not a lot of, discussion or pre-planning in terms of our itinerary or our intention or our agenda. When we discuss these topics, they're as brand new to me as they are to him, and our opinions that we share in the public domain are legitimately, authentic. They're organic.
It raises an interesting issue, right? As we dwindle down the last couple of minutes, it seems like you haven't noticed that, because there was a compliment almost to from at least one of the callers. Let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
That said, "Hey, glad to hear you guys are taking different sides."
Yeah. They appreciate hearing it.
But the thing of it is that why is that necessary? Why is that? I think that you can get up and discuss different sides of the argument that's being proposed, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be able to take that side. You might not agree with it.
Yeah, indeed.
Might not be an authentic position.
Well, I would only suggest that perhaps two persons.
But I'm happy to have arguments with you.
Two persons who have never run away from a debate anywhere in their lives, and persons perhaps with experience, which we do, and also persons that have a vast vocabulary, which we do. Again, they say it ain't bragging if it's the truth. But to have these same two persons perhaps, disagreeing on a point is where listeners tend to learn even more so. But again, these things will happen. They have happened before. They are likely to happen again. But I think the only point we're making is that we're not going to, sort of make it a point to do so on every subject, because we believe.
I think it's just good theater.
The learning environment happens much more, I think, deliberately when the conversation itself is authentic as opposed to canned or put on. That's just our thoughts. Again, you're willing to disagree with us without being disagreeable by dialing 745-2626.
You can imagine what they'll say when you take sides on a certain issue, Mr. Harris.
Yeah.
There's certain issues be like, I'm not sure if I want to argue in favor of that one.
Yeah, well, I tell you what,
they'll be the same ones beating you up. Ellio, I can't believe you agreed with that. I didn't. I was trying to make...
Can you believe it? I would just say this: don't debate against us. You can debate with us, but don't debate against us.
Not advised.
Not advised.
Not advised.
Not at all.
Try it another day.
Yes, indeed. You will not win that particular battle.
Yeah, that's right.
I hate to say it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be as humble as I can be.
All of your efforts will end with an incomplete success.
That's right.
They keep it politically correct.
There might be some crying going on at some point.
Crying and wailing and gnashing of teeth.
To avoid all of that uncomfortableness, just don't do it. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else on your mind?
No, that was it, my friend. I just wanted to let persons know the sad news of MSC, which is, I think, our third largest carrier here in Cayman. I think it's Royal Caribbean and Carnival. I think Carnival's first in Cayman and then Royal Caribbean and MSC, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on it. But either way, one of them taking us off of the itinerary for 2026. And this is not a joke. This is not, it's simple and easy to put that line out, but it is a matter with significant gravity, particularly for those persons who are involved in the cruise industry. And just wanted you to hear it here first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're convinced that the worst is yet to come. We're going to see further declines, cruise lines taking us off their itinerary. That's going to impact individual lives and that of families, and that too is going to have an impact.
Everyone.
The government and everyone, but more importantly, like the whole issue of minimum wage, it's going to impact people first, and we have to remember that, regardless of what side of the fence we stand on those viewpoints, the pressure for families will be felt at the individual level first. And again, whether or not help is on the way quickly or slowly remains to be seen. But we have prophesied, and I just want to point it out that there is trouble coming around the horizon.
Prophesied.
Well, prophesied, predicted, looked into our crystal ball, and this is the future we saw from it. We love to be wrong, but it doesn't happen too often. Just very quickly, Ellio, we got 3 minutes left. We talk about your favorite president, good old Donald Trump, DJT, right? And his, looming tariffs and his major decisions. We see in the media 4 Caribbean countries, namely Antigua, Barbuda, Dominica, St. Lucia, and St. Kitts and Nevis, have been named in a leaked U.S. State Department memo as potential additions to expanded U.S. travel restrictions. Although the Cayman Islands residents from those countries will find it more difficult to travel if restrictions are implemented, there will be little to no impact here in the Cayman Islands. And much like we talked about earlier this week or last week, whether it relate to, the issuing of U.S. visas here in the Cayman Islands and or its people are not viewed as a threat in the international geopolitical sphere. So the impacts of these new restrictions will have little impact on Caymanians in particular traveling to, whether it be throughout the region or throughout the globe. But certainly the restrictions on the part of the Trump administration continue. The document dated the 14th of June and signed by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio outlines a draft list of 36 countries of concern that might be recommended for full or partial suspension of entry into the U.S. if they do not meet specific benchmarks within 60 days. The issues to be addressed involve questionable security of passports, data sharing, visa overstays, and anti-Semitic or anti-American activity. So whilst Donald Trump's sanctions go way past just the United States and even arguably dips its toes into the Caribbean region, none of these sanctions impact us here in the Cayman Islands. So a bit of good news, a bit of sweet mixed in with a little sour.
Well, time check, because I don't know exactly what the impact's going to be as we talk about impact, but the fact that we're hearing now today on BBC that there's a very strong possibility that America might be directly intervening and getting involved with this war up there in the Middle East.
Oh, my God, yeah.
That is going to be significant, and I can assure you that will have some economic ramifications as well.
And Iran is not Iraq. U.S. government calling, Donald Trump specifically calling for, what is it, the words were very clear. I'm paraphrasing, but he wants a complete surrender from Iran.
The unconditional.
Unconditional, thank you, Ellio. See, I love you, buddy. Unconditional surrender is the only thing Donald Trump will accept from Iran.
Why didn't you take my word like that on the minimum wage?
Yeah, well,
just troubling you.
Can't help myself. Anyway, 29 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock is the time. That's all we have for you today. But be sure to tune in tomorrow as we host Miss World Cayman Islands right here on Straight Talk on Bobo FM.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo 103.1. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media.
Be prepared. You should have a grab-and-go survival kit that includes your ID, cash, and other vital documents in case you have to leave in an emergency. Keep them sealed in a watertight container. Be informed. Make a plan. Be prepared. For more information, visit caymanprepared.ky.
It's trivia every Wednesday from 7 o'clock at Sandbar on the Georgetown waterfront. Your chance to win some fantastic prizes in our free-to-enter Trivia Madness. Great offers on beer buckets.
Oh, yeah.
Margaritas.